Welcome to another episode of Raven Conversations. I'm Joe C. Mandel, State Public Affairs Officer for the Washington National Guard. And today I'm joined by Mr. Bruce Ecclestone. He is the director of the Washington National Guard Joint Services Support Office here on Camp Murray, but it's for the whole state. And he's going to talk about what the Joint Service Support is, the programs you have over there, and how Guardsmen can utilize those programs to help, especially in times of need, right? When it comes to financial emergencies, that kind of stuff. So we appreciate you joining us, Bruce.
Thank you.
And it's still weird to say Bruce, but I'm going to do it for as much as I can before I say Sergeant Major.
Yeah, that's okay, sir.
Intro and background on yourself.
Bruce Ecclestone. I am the Joint Services Support Director. I am a 37-year veteran of Army service. I joined the National Guard in 1992. I have been a traditional guardsman, technician. I've been AGR. So I'm aware of all the challenges that our service members face, regardless of status. I currently live in Eastern Washington. I'm married, I have 7 kids, and a whole bushel of grandchildren that I love to spend time with. And really I guess the great thing about being the director of the Joint Services Support is the service member care aspect of it. That's what I've been doing for the duration of my career, is really focusing on taking care of people. And so what I like about the Joint Services Support is its focus as an enterprise, is to provide soldiers, airmen, their families, our retiree population, with all kinds of access to all kinds of care.
Yeah. And like I said, those that are watching probably look at you and be like, wait, he's Sergeant Major Ecclestone on drill weekends. Very much like myself, you became a Title V civilian that continues to work and support Guardsmen and what we do here. So, and I'm glad you're in that role. How did you learn about the Guard? That's always a great question. I think I like the stories of how people found out about the Guard.
You go way back in the Wayback Machine. So I transitioned off of active duty in 1991 after the first Gulf War. And I was going to college, taking advantage of the GI Bill at the time in the Tri-Cities. And I was actually sitting by the pool, drinking beer and having a conversation with a gentleman. My sister managed the apartment complex, and she came out and introduced him to me. She had been in both the Washington Air National Guard and the Washington Army National Guard. And she said, hey, I need to introduce you guys. Bruce, this is Lee Ligowick. He's the commander of the 81st Infantry Brigade. Lee, this is my brother Bruce. He just got out of the Army. And he asked me what I did when I was in the Army. And I told him I was an M1 tank mechanic. And he asked me, because the state was just getting M1 tanks at the time, he asked me if I had ever thought about joining the Washington National Guard. And at the time, I was pretty quick to tell him no. And then he began to tell me about M-Day traditional opportunities, the federal technician community, and that intrigued me because what I missed about being in uniform was the people in uniform, and then really, I enjoyed also working on M1 tanks. So that's what brought me to the National Guard.
And then you worked at Mates before taking over as the Sergeant Major here full time, and then moved over to the J9.
I spent about 25 years at Mates in Yakima, and then transitioned to Western Washington to go to work at Utes. About the same time I got selected to be the 81st Brigade Sergeant Major. And I needed to be here because a lot of the really critical decisions are made on this side of the mountains, and I recognized that not being in Western Washington would create a little bit of a gap. Mm-hmm. So I commute from Eastern Washington to Western Washington, and still do it to this day. And so I understand that hardship as well, the tyranny of distance and all those things.
Yeah. So Joint Services Support, I think it's a pretty great program. Everything you have over there is fantastic. The people there are fantastic, and they truly care about our Guard. I would say it's a huge program. It probably takes a long time to talk about. I would say the few-minute snapshot of what is Joint Services Support.
So Joint Services Support, when it was first built, was intended to be a one-stop shop for all kinds of care, with a focus on employment opportunities.
So you brought a number of people with you today to talk about their programs. Give you a chance to quickly introduce them and the programs that they manage.
Okay, so we have Chaplain Joe Ellefson. He is the State Family Programs Director. He's responsible for the oversight of the program that has most of the family readiness specialists that are dispersed throughout the state. With him is the lead family readiness specialist, Miss Deb Discolo. And they'll talk about the family program enterprise and all the things that they do in support of our family members, service members, and their families. I also have Miss Hope Perini, who is the new Integrated Primary Prevention Workforce Program Officer. And she'll give, hopefully, a really quality introduction to primary prevention as a program and what its purpose is, and how our service members will benefit from that program in the long run. And then Miss Angela Taylor, who is our Sexual Assault Response Program Officer for the state of Washington.
So thanks, Bruce, for introducing your team, and we're going to bring up the first two. We've got Chaplain Joe Ellefson coming up to join us, as well as Deb Discola. So, Joe, we'll start with you. Quick introduction on yourself and background.
Okay, yeah, so I've been in the Guard 23 years, never attended to join the Army, and for some reason the recruiter got me. So then I was in aviation for, I think, 14, 15 years. I worked over at ASF number 1 for about 6 years as a mechanic, and then supposedly God called me to go to ministry. So I went to seminary. I was a chaplain candidate at the 161. And then about 18 months later, I came back to aviation as their chaplain, and that's where I'm at. I've been in this current position for almost 2 years in March. I've had more gray hairs with this position than any other position I ever had, but it is a fulfilling position.
How'd you learn about the Guard?
It was the recruiter. I had two buddies that were they were like, "Hey, we don't have cars, so can you drive us to the recruiting station?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." So I got there, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you take the ASVAB?" Or, that's what it was called back then.
Yeah.
I said, "Sure." We all took the ASVAB, and he said, "Yeah, you scored comfortably high." So he said, "You can have any job you want." I was like, "Well, I always wanted to be a pilot." He's like, "You know what? It's better if you start out as a mechanic." Right? I was like, okay. So at the age of 17, I signed on and became a mechanic. And to be honest, I'm glad that I joined the Guard. It's been very fruitful and exciting for me.
Yeah. Deb, kind of background on yourself.
I started out as an FRG whenever Desert Storm kicked off in Germany, and became part of the program, came back to the States, had children, and saw this job online as a contractor, as a fax specialist. And I have loved it and been here ever since 2007.
And any knowledge about the Guard prior to coming and working full-time on Camp Murray?
I did not. I had family that were a part of the Guard, but none that were in home.
Yeah. So your programs, Joe, we'll start with you. You kind of highlight what your program does and what do you do to help our Guardsmen.
Okay. So I got a lot of programs that I oversee. Deb's program for family programs, so that's our military family readiness specialist. So, but I'll leave that to her. She's more knowledgeable in that side. But we have the ESGR, which is our employment assistance for people that are needing help. For Guard and Reserves that might be struggling, trying to get their jobs back and stuff like that, and also promoting partnerships with local businesses and employers, right? So that that they're treated right as they go out the door for deployments or anything else like that. We also have the Work for Warriors. There are employment transition assistants, right? So they do a lot of the resume building, getting people connected with employers throughout the state, and helping a lot of people get jobs, higher paying jobs, right? Not just like, the beginning pay. We want to get them paid to the fact where they can buy a home, they can, survive on their own. Then we also have the child and youth. We do large camps. We do small events here in Camp Murray, also throughout all the armories and stuff where we have our emperors located at. In our different units and stuff like that. And it's really about engaging with youth that those parents that are in the Guard, the reserves, and seeing how we can build resiliency in them, right? So that when we take them on when they're 9 years old, by the time they're 18, the hope is like, hey, they've grown within the program. They've gotten these many trainings that we get, right, like MRT and stuff like that. And the hope is like it fills our ranks, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's active duty and they eventually come to the Guard, or they start out in the Guard, and a lot of our kids do that. We also have the TAS, which is our Transition Assistance Specialist. Many of you guys know her as Annie, right? So she does a lot of the VA stuff. She was always busy, but she's done really great work in terms of getting service members their due rights through the VA and stuff like. Very knowledgeable, and if she doesn't know the answer, she'll get it for you. I also have the R3SP program. It's the Resilience, Readiness, Reduction, Suicide Prevention. That's a mouthful. And so they do a lot of the MRT training, the suicide prevention training, gathering data and stuff of that nature, right, to see where we can tweak things throughout the state in terms of some of the training that we currently have that might help with reduction in some of those areas, right? I also oversee this Survivor Outreach Services, our SOS, so we have 2 of them in the state. So they definitely handle all our Gold Star families and stuff like that, so they're a great resource. We also have Yellow Ribbon. Everybody knows Yellow Ribbon if you've been on a deployment. It's transitioned a lot, but assisting family members and soldiers to reintegrate back into society again after being deployed for a year or so, and then obviously the families not having them there for a year, right? And then we also have our partnerships, which is the Military One Source. Paul Parker, he comes over usually two times a week and sits at our place over at Building 3. And then we also have partnerships with, the Air and Family Program or managers over at the 141st and the 194th. They do some of the similar stuff we do, taking care of their airmen and stuff like that. And we try to work in a joint fashion. And then we have our PFC, which is our financial counselor. We just got one rehired again, which is great because we've been out with one for about 400 days. So he helps with the readiness piece of financial stuff. And then we also have an MFLAC. That position is vacant right now, but we're hoping to get that filled, hopefully, depending on the contract, in the next, hopefully, 3 months or so. And your MFLAC is like your counselor and stuff like that. So since that's the largest portion of the JSS, there's a lot there. That's why I had to write it down. Yeah. Because I even forget what programs I manage. But I would say the heart of the family programs is definitely our MFERS and what Deb does. So.
Yeah, and Deb, I'd be remiss to say, Holiday Magic was fantastic this year. I think you always do a fantastic job with it. Every program that you do is fantastic over there. Briefly describe what an MFLAC is, and you're the lead. You are the lead family readiness for the Guard.
Okay, so Military Family Readiness Specialist, what we assist with are financial assistance, counselor support, TRICARE issues, kind of an A to Z type shop. Anything throughout their military career in all stages. We have resources within the community that the soldier lives and the family.
Yeah. So one of the questions is, how does a Guardsman utilize their unit level family readiness folks?
We drill with them on drill weekend. So we have a staff member in that location to be there to support. We also have an 800 line that is answered 24/7 that will direct to the individual in that location to be able to support them. So I got to give a plug for that 800 line. It's 800-364-7492. So don't hesitate to reach out to that because we really do answer it.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put that information in the notes and probably put it on the screen too. And when Deb kind of mentions it. So for our Guardsmen who they just don't know, how do they utilize the programs that you manage and you guys support? How do they get a hold of you guys? How do they actually utilize those programs?
So obviously the 1-800 line, so it's 24/7 is one of the main ways. But the hope is that our MFERs are connecting with the units and the commanders and the readiness, right? So they know when something happens that they can go directly to them, right? Mm-hmm. And then that gets filtered to the appropriate programs that are within the Joint Service Support, or J9, as we like to call it, right? So the MFERs are truly the front-facing, person, and then they should be filtering information back to the needs of the service member.
Yeah, and I got to give a quick plug for your PFCs, your financial counselors. only because I think it was probably about 5 years ago on a drill weekend, we had a PFC come out and actually give an annual briefing, right? And this is the first time I think I'd ever heard one talk about, hey, how are you using your TSP, right? The Thrift Savings Plan.
Yeah.
What are you doing with it? How are you utilizing it? And it made me sit down and look at my TSP at the time and say, am I utilizing this thing to the max I can? Right. And I immediately changed. And I would say within 5 years, I've tripled what I had in my TSP just off of that one person's advice in that one meeting. And it's phenomenal that they bring that wealth of knowledge in.
Yeah, it is great.
So I appreciate you coming on and talking about your programs. Really, anything else you want to mention about your programs that you run? And Deb, anything you want to mention about our military family specialists?
No, I everybody within the family programs and even in the J9 is passionate about what they do, and they truly want to help service members because either they've experienced that themselves. I mean, I've even utilized some of these programs myself, when I was a new officer. So it's just a great place to come and get connected, and then you can also turn it back and volunteer for some of our programs. Like our child and youth, we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for volunteers for the MFers and, the family programs piece of it because Deb actually does a lot of these huge events, right, with her team and everything. So it's important that we see our service members and our leadership being engaged in that too. So.
Yeah. And Deb, I kind of want to kick it one more time over to you. Like Holiday Magic was great. The turkey, drop is a great event. The backpack event is fantastic. I think it's an underutilized, like all these are underutilized. How do those programs help our guardsmen?
One of the things that we find out is whenever they come in, we bring in the other resources to be able to kind of do a wraparound to see what other services we can support them with. Maybe there's a need for employment. That's why they're going through our program. So I think bringing those things in, you're giving them the free items, but you're also supporting them and doing the wraparound services that are available. And these things are spreading as well. So we're able to support in different locations. We're having these events in Spokane, in Yakima, Vancouver. And with more volunteers, we could even do more. I would love to ultimately see us do these events in all locations.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
And I just want to add, these events are great and they're wonderful. But ultimately what we want to see also is these people that are utilizing events, that they don't have to utilize them anymore.
Yeah.
Right. We want to get ahead of all that stuff,
Yeah. And I think you mentioned that too in kind of an interview we did earlier, Deb, was, well, these are great and they're using the resources. We want them to use these resources to kind of never have to come back to these events in the future. So, and that's kind of building them up. So, and helping them out. So getting that that handshake deal, like, hey, you're going to now go talk to these individuals to see about getting a better, something better. Right. So, and I think that's a huge piece. One
of the benefits that we do see is we do see some of the soldiers and the family members that have used our services previously come out and support these events. And they come out, they help us set up, and they get things ready. And truly, without them, we wouldn't be able to do these events.
Yeah. So I appreciate you both coming on and talking to us about the programs. And we're excited to help you guys spread the good word of what the Joint Service Support is doing. And we appreciate you coming out here. So now we're going to bring up Hope Perini and Angela Taylor, and they're going to talk about their programs and what they do at the Joint Service Support. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so Hope, we'll start with you, kind of your intro and background.
All right, so I am the Integrated Primary Prevention Officer. I've been doing this position here at Camp Murray since June. I've been working in social services in a variety of aspects for the last 18 years. My master's degree is in health psychology, which is the integration between physical and mental health. And before this, I was a government contractor, and then I worked as a federal employee across the fence over at JBLM for a little bit as a family advocacy program specialist, and then came over here because I hear it's better over here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody says that. Was this your first kind of exposure to the Guard, or had you worked in the Guard prior?
Yeah, I have. It's been a learning curve. Had no experience with Guard unless they were activated, and then, of course, they could utilize the services at JBLM. But besides that, I had no other experience.
Yeah. And then, Angela, what about yourself?
Prior active duty, myself, Army, and I've been serving ever since I got out. I went to voc rehab, got a degree. I worked at the the VA Medical Center down in Portland, serving veterans there, and we transitioned up here, and I worked for WDVA. That's when I found out about the Guard, because I was part of the program that started the Veterans Innovations Program, so providing grants to National Guard. I was provided the opportunity to transition over to the Guard in the SAPR program when it started to expand in 2010. So I was here from 2010 to 2013. But at the time, the NDA changed and said no longer contractors could be a sexual assault response. So I said, well, if I'm going to keep doing this, I'm going to do it somewhere fun. So I applied to all the overseas jobs. Went to Belgium first, then to Germany. And I saw the opportunity to come back, and I jumped at it, and thankfully was offered the opportunity. So I've been back to the Guard since 2019.
Yeah. So we'll start with you. How do Guardsmen utilize your program?
So we have recently expanded this last year. There used to be 2 full-time Army and 2 full-time in each wing. And now we're up to, I need to fill one more position, we'll be up to 9 full-time staff. So in the past, we've heavily relied on our 1-800, we have an 800 number, we have a 253 hotline number, also managed 24/7. But we have 37 collaterals, duty victim advocates, all throughout the units. So right there, uniform, working right alongside everybody.
Yeah, and I think your resources are incredibly important. Sexual assault and even sexual harassment, it's a topic, and it's a very hot topic. And I think having more advocates and more resources is always critical, especially in the Guard. And even on drill weekends, right?
Yeah.
We see it even happening in drill weekends and ATs. It's probably more common in a full-time status.
Yes.
But on a drill weekend, it still happens.
It does. And, I've got my new full-time staff out there drill weekends, providing the training, networking with everybody, making sure they know. Because like I said, just in the last 6 months, we've hired all these new people. And I can tell you the response has been great. People are really excited to see a civilian. Sometimes it's a little easier to go report to someone that's not wearing the same uniform.
Yeah. And so I think one of my biggest questions, and it's a sensitive topic, right? Mm-hmm. And not to, oh my gosh, it's such a problem. We've hired a ton of people. But when we talk about like sexual assault, it's not just male, female. It can be male, male, female, female. It's kind of the gambit of everything you're probably seeing.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about sex. It's about power and control.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter. Sex doesn't matter. You're right. We have male on male, we have female and female, vice versa. So, and at the end of the day, that's what, prevention. How do we teach people to treat people better and get at that power and control struggle?
Yeah. And that's where you kind of come in, Hope, and you help with prevention. Can you kind of talk about the resources you provide?
I do. So integrated primary prevention is this new thing that came out of the Fort Hood investigation, right? It was a recommendation to Congress that this program be developed. And the reason they did an integrated approach, because it's not just sexual violence, it's not just domestic violence. We're looking at sexual violence, domestic violence, self-directed harm, which is suicide and substance use, and workplace violence and sexual harassment, because we know that all the risk factors kind of bleed into one another, right? So I like to give the example that finances, right? It's the number one topic that people argue with in relationships. It is also a leading factor in suicide, right, is financial hardship. And we know that a lot of people here in Washington State have financial difficulties because it's really expensive to live here. So as a program, what we're trying to do is we recognize that that's an issue. How do we get ahead of that? How do we help people so that it doesn't end up crisis mode to where they're having to get grants or assistance with family programs and things like that? And so we're still trying to understand that. We're trying to understand what the issue is here in the Washington National Guard. What are the biggest things that are rising to the top? And so with that, we're doing a data compilation and a community needs assessment. And from there, we will develop a comprehensive integrated prevention plan, which will go to the TAG. And then he'll be like, yes, this is all good. Let's go forth. And then we'll start implementing that. My staff, there's 8 of us. And we do mill around a lot. We're doing Rainier reception. We're trying to get out and seeing all the units. All of my staff are kind of designated a geographical location to just make it a little easier since Washington's such a big state. And so that people can see us and we can ask those questions like, what do you feel that's missing or we need, or what's working well and you would like to see more of that? And so essentially it's like we're hoping to provide a vaccine. So think about smallpox, right? The reason smallpox vaccine was created is because there was an issue of smallpox. Then we vaccinated, and do we really see smallpox anymore, right? we were able to eradicate it. That's the whole point of the integrated primary prevention program, is to try and get ahead of it that way. So hopefully we can eradicate as much as we possibly can, knowing that that's a really lofty goal to have 100%, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to do.
So how do Guardsmen utilize the prevention resources they have?
So we do have a main line number, and we are located in Building 3 in JSS. Really, right now, as we're doing that data compilation, eventually we'll start going out and reaching out to all of the units more. So, when you see a prevention staff out at the unit and things like that, they can use them that way as well. And then we'll start offering more classes, workshops, more things, being part of Yellow Ribbon, and so we can engage with the units that way as well.
Yeah, I think both of you guys have a critical role to play in keeping our Guardsmen healthy from a mental, physical, spiritual standpoint. Anything else you guys want to add about your programs?
No, just that we're here. Please, if you're experiencing trauma, call. If you have questions, just call. Our 24/7, we're there to answer any questions.
I appreciate it. We can definitely put that information in the notes as well. Hope anything?
No, I just look forward to hearing from everybody. Anybody who has thoughts as to how we can do things better. Again, things that are working great, what you guys feel that needs to be seen and heard, and where we can start doing some work. Just hit us up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys both coming on. And if Bruce is still here, I think he's in the back. We'll bring him back up to kind of close this thing out. Thanks again.
Thank you.
So, Bruce, I thank you for bringing your staff out, or some of your staff, because I know it's not just 5 people. You guys have a team over there.
So we have a large complement of folks within Building 3, and then we have service capabilities arrayed throughout the state. There's a lot of different armories that are supported. We've got a pretty good complement in Spokane and in Yakima as well.
Yeah. So it's across the state. It's not just one.
Yeah.
And quick plug for all your programs once again. I know we've probably thrown a lot of information at the listeners, but once again, if you're a young guardsman and you don't know where to turn, what can they do to better their situation or help themselves out?
So what I've learned over time is that our service members find themselves in crisis or in struggle for a lot of different reasons. The JSS's function and purpose is to help our service members and their families through those trying times, whatever the struggle might be. And we are arrayed and have a complement of capabilities that set the conditions for us to do that. And oftentimes what I hear in circulation, traveling, talking to soldiers or airmen is that they're not aware. So my hope is that this podcast or Raven Conversation will help our service members become more aware of the Joint Services Support, what its purpose is, that we're here to help you. Being a service member or a family member or a supporter of a service member is hard. It's hard business. There's not a large portion of our population that chooses to do what we do. And our purpose in the JSS is to help our service members through that difficulty. Even if it's just to come into the JSS and give thanks or volunteer, or if you're a community partner, if you want to partner with the Joint Services Support, or you can, if there's a gap in one of our capabilities and you want to make recommendations, please feel free to reach out to our team at Building 3.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. So if you're interested in learning more about the Joint Services Support, we'll always put that information in the notes. We'll make sure the 1-800 numbers, we'll get all that info in there. Courtney, I'll get with you to get all that. If you like the video, give it a like. If you have any questions about resources or need to know more, definitely put it in the notes or in the comments, and we can definitely pass that along to the appropriate offices at the JSS. If you want to know more about the Guard in general, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you guys watching. Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it.